This is part 3 to my rhetoric review of Kamala's first interview on CNN. I know these videos don't get tons of views, but I enjoy making them, even if they're boring. But they get into Tim Walz a little bit here.
Described your service in the National Guard. You said that you carried weapons in war, but you have never deployed actually in a war zone. A campaign official said that you misspoke. Did you?
Well, first of all, I'm incredibly proud. I've done 24 years of wearing the uniform of this country. Equally proud of my service in a public school classroom, whether it's Congress or the governor. My record speaks for itself, but I think people are coming to get to know me. I speak like they do. I speak candidly. I wear my emotions on my sleeves, and I speak especially passionately about our children being shot in schools and around guns. So I think people know me. They know who I am. They know where my heart is. And again, my record has been out there for over 40 years to speak for itself.
And yeah, being a heavy artillery specialist, someone who had a disability, I think Tim Walz couldn't hear in one ear, I think it was, because of using this weaponry. That quote is, nothing to really care about, but Republicans are fabricating that narrative that it's a big thing that matters, trying to take away his 24 years of service. And I saw someone post that CNN in this interview is asking questions that are just the Republican framing and trying to create a debate and put Walz and Harris on the defensive. And right there, just framing it like, there's been accusations that you never actually were deployed to an actual war zone. It's like having Bash even use that question because that's straight from JD Vance's Twitter feed.
And the idea that you said that you were in war.
Yeah.
Did you misspeak, as the campaign has said?
Yeah, I said we were talking about, in this case, this was after a school shooting, the ideas of carrying these weapons of war. And my wife, the English teacher, told me my grammar is not always correct. But again, if it's not this, it's an attack on my children for showing love for me, or it's an attack on my dog. I'm not going to do that. And the one thing I'll never do is I'll never demean another member's service in any way. I never have, and I never will.
We heard for weeks and weeks that we needed to have these policy conversations, and now we finally have an interview, and CNN opts to ask every question around, what's going to create the best headlines, asking about Tim Walz's stolen Valor, fake Twitter attack that the right wing launched on him, asking Harris about, Donald Trump saying, "Are you really a black woman? When did you turn black?" They're asking these questions that are so media focused and so not policy related, instead of having a genuine conversation about policy in general. So I think this interview and the way it was conducted is one of the most poorly conducted interviews with so much hype I've ever seen on the side of CNN. And it's Dana Bash.
Other question, because again, this is all new.
Or Dana, I forget.
This was not, however many days ago, this was not on either of your bingo cards, especially yours. You had to clarify that you had said that you and your wife used IVF, but it turned out you used a different kind of fertility in order to have children. And then when you ran for Congress in 2006, your campaign repeatedly made false statements about a 1995 arrest for drunk and reckless driving. What do you say to voters who aren't sure whether they can take you at your word?
Well, I've been very public. I think they can see my students come out, former folks I've served with, and they vouch for me. I certainly own my mistakes when I make them. The one thing I'll tell you is I wished in this country wouldn't have to do this. I spoke about our infertility issues because it's hell, and families know this. And I spoke about the treatments that were available to us that had those beautiful children there. That's quite a contrast in folks that are trying to take those rights away from us. And so I think people know who I am. They know that record. They've seen that. I've taught thousands of students. I've been out there. And I won't apologize for speaking passionately, whether it's guns in schools or protecting of reproductive rights. The contrast could not be clearer between what we're running against. The vice president's position on this has been clear. And I think most Americans get it if you've been through that. I don't think they're cutting hairs on IVF or IUI. I think what they're cutting hairs on is an abortion ban and the ability to be able to deny families the chance to have a beautiful child.
Yeah, and that's a great response from Tim right there. He goes right back to the issues that matter. He doesn't play into the drama that much. He says, essentially, that's a dumb question I'm not going to give too much credibility to. And the way she frames it, what do you say to the people that are claiming you cannot be trusted? People don't know Tim Walz around America, and her framing is, it sounds like there's all these people that say you can't be trusted. How can you prove that you can be trusted? And it's like you've had a 40-year career, a 50-year career to look at with, well, not 50, but a 40-year career to look at with Tim Walz, where these topics have been discussed so much. And by the way, these are still the questions they're choosing to ask in this interview. Terrible interview style, terrible interview questions, terrible execution, terrible follow-up questions. Really just trying to get headlines and trying to get clickbait. And that's why Harris and Walz are avoiding these dumb interviews, because this reality TV show setup only benefits one campaign.
Vice President Harris, you were a very staunch defender of President Biden's capacity to serve another 4 years. Right after the debate, you insisted that President Biden is extraordinarily strong. Given where we are now, do you have any regrets about what you told the American people?
No, not at all. Not at all. I have served with President Biden for almost 4 years now, and I'll tell you, it's one of the greatest honors of my career, truly. He cares so deeply about the American people. He is so smart and loyal to the American people. And I have spent hours upon hours with him, be it in the Oval Office or the Situation Room. He has the intelligence, the commitment, and the judgment and disposition that I think the American people rightly
All right, we're
deserve
going faster.
in their president.
1.25.
By contrast, the former president has none of that. And so, one, I am so proud to have served as vice president to Joe Biden. And two, I am so proud to be running with Tim Walz for president of the United States and to bring America what I believe the American people deserve, which is a new way forward, and turn the page on the last decade of what I believe has been contrary to where the spirit of our country really lies.
But the last decade, of course, the last 3.5 years has been part of your administration.
I'm talking about an era that started about a decade ago, where there is some suggestion, warped I believe it to be, that the measure of the strength of a leader is based on who you beat down, instead of where I believe most Americans are, which is to believe that the true measure of the strength of a leader is based on who you lift up. That's what's at stake as much as any other.
And that pivot goes to a deeper point of anti-intellectualism taking over. Donald Trump is the reason we cannot look at the bipartisan plans like the American Rescue Plan, the bipartisan infrastructure plan. It's why we cannot look at the Biden policies as successes, because we have allowed, the media has allowed Donald Trump to set the narrative for literally every conversation we have. So we can't say USA had the best recovery from COVID. We can't say the USA is doing, point A, B, and C pretty well, and the Biden admin is a part of that. Everyone's mad. Everyone's looking at things to complain about. And it's almost like we had a house fire, and we're blaming the firefighters because they weren't able to save enough of the house. Like, that's really what's happening. We had a big fire. The Biden admin with the Inflation Reduction Act and a bunch of other policies helped to put out that fire. And now they're getting blamed for the fire that they didn't cause, that Donald Trump helped fuel. And as we fix the fire, we are also held to a higher standard on how we have to rebuild the building back. And we are building back better regardless. But
detail that we could discuss in this election.
Because we haven't had a chance to talk, I'm just curious, staying on President Biden, when he called you and said he was pulling out of the race, what was that like? And did he offer to endorse you right away, or did you ask for it?
It was a Sunday, so here, I'll give you a little too much information.
Go for it. There's no such thing, Madam Vice President.
My family was staying with us, and including my baby nieces, and we had just had pancakes, and Auntie, can I have more bacon? Yes, I'll make you more bacon. And then we were sitting down to do a puzzle, and the phone rang, and it was Joe Biden, and he told me what he had decided to do, and I asked him, "Are you sure?" And he said yes, and that's how I learned about it.
And what about the endorsement? Did you ask for it?
he was very clear that he was going to support me.
So when he called to tell you, he said, I'm pulling out of the race and I'm going to support you.
Well, my first thought was not about me, to be honest.
I love how Kamala, she doesn't have this ability to make anything seem like super special. So she does not have the ability to make things seem super flowery. She wasn't saying like, I knew there was a huge change happening in our country and the entire world was watching. And when Joe Biden called, I picked up the phone and he made his decision. And I realized that impact it was going to have on the entire country. And at that point, I knew I had to step up so I can carry forward this great American story. Kamala does not have that in her speaking arsenal. So she literally, and this is one thing that she gets like attacked for by the right, but she literally recounts what she was doing that day. Like, I was eating breakfast. We were doing a puzzle. I got a phone call. It was Joe Biden. Joe Biden told me he made a decision. I said, "Are you sure?" And he said yes. That's how I found out. So Kamala's not giving any flowery, like she's not giving any exciting telling of the story, which is kind of endearing, I think, because usually politicians, I mean, I know myself, it'd be like, this was a monumentous moment and I couldn't believe the gravity, but I know that I need to now carry this forward. Like, she didn't do any of that.
To be honest with you, my first thought was about him, to be honest. I think history is going to show a number of things about Joe Biden's presidency. I think history is going to show that in so many ways it was transformative, be it on what we have accomplished around finally investing in America's infrastructure, investing in new economies, in new industries, what we have done to bring our allies back together and have confidence in who we are as America and grow that alliance, what we have done to stand true to our principles.
I don't like the whole "what we have done" refrain. I'd rather her keep saying like, "We have done this," rather than what we have done. Say, we have passed the bipartisan infrastructure plan, a plan that Donald Trump said he was going to do forever, and he said it was easy. We actually got it done. Trump did it. We have passed the Inflation Reduction Act. We have capped insulin prices for everyone on Medicare. We have given Medicare the ability to negotiate with pharmaceutical companies and lower drug costs. We have done this. We don't need to talk about it in this abstract way of what has happened.
Including the one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I think history is going to show not only has Joe Biden led an administration that has achieved those extraordinary successes, but the character of the man is one that he has been in his life.
And if she wants to give it more to Biden, which is why she's probably saying that, she wants to give it to Biden, so she's not going to say, we have right now. Or we are, whatever. But she could say, Joe Biden's administration, together we did this. I'd rather just get on top of that more to really own the strong parts of the administration. You can say not everything was perfect, but these are the strong points. And also, we had a million other things we wanted to do that Republicans did not allow us to do that were going to be great in Congress, with the child tax credit, the infrastructure, more infrastructure spending, the immigration bill that Donald Trump killed. Bring it back to that. I'd rather just a little bit more straightforward of a conversation style than what she's going for here. It's not bad, but just, when hearing someone speak, if you listen to AOC, for example, she has a defined narrative that she operates off of when she answers questions. So every answer that AOC will give in an interview is going to be coming from that narrative and defined by it, but it's going to influence her answers in different areas. So when she brings up infrastructure and everything that was done, she's going to bring up her community and how it impacted that community. It makes it more genuine, it makes it stronger, and candidates feel better when they talk from whatever their wheelhouse is. So Kamala needs to find her wheelhouse and lead conversations and interviews into her wheelhouse. You don't need to participate in the exact foundation that the interviewer is giving you. You don't need to answer every question directly. You need to give answers, but don't buy into their framework. So Kamala needs to find her strong point, which I said in part 1 or 2 of this rhetoric review, which is typically bringing it back to personal experience and things she truly cares about. So if she talks to a voter that touched her emotions, then bring them up to go through these issues. Bring it back to everyday voters, just to make it sound better, more concise, and more passionate, more confident, all of that stuff.
And career, including as a president, quite selfless and puts the American people first.
I just have to ask you both about two standout moments, aside, of course, from the addresses that you both gave, but standout moments that were perhaps unexpected during the convention? You mentioned one of them, Governor. A moment that you shared, that the world shared with your son, Gus. You were speaking, the camera caught him, so incredibly proud of you, so emotional, saying, "That's my dad."
Yeah, I don't know as a father I could have ever imagined that. I'm grateful for so many reasons to be on this ticket, but that moment, to understand what was really important, to have my son feel a sense of pride in me, that I was trying to do the right thing. And it was, you try and protect your kids, it brings notoriety and things, but it was just such a visceral, emotional moment that I'm grateful I got to experience it, and I'm so proud of him. I'm proud of him. I'm proud of Hope. I'm proud of Gwen. She's a wonderful mother, and these are great kids. And I think the one thing is, talking about the era we're in, is our politics can be better. It can be different. We can show some of these things, and we can have families involved in this. And I hope that I hope people felt that out there, and I hope they hug their kids a little tighter, because you just never know, and life can be kind of hard.
And last question, Madam Vice President, the photograph that has gone viral. You were speaking, one of your grandnieces that you were just talking about was watching you accept the nomination. You didn't explicitly talk about gender or race in your speech, but it obviously means a lot to a lot of people, and that viral picture really says it. What does it mean?
And again, Kamala's campaign is trying to make this the anti-Hillary Clinton campaign. They're not focusing on race or gender in messaging. They're saying it's a matter of fact by not doing that. They're not emphasizing it. They're just representing it. And I love how CNN is trying to keep, they keep trying to bring back these topics that are going to get clickbait and headlines.
What does it mean to you?
I am running because I believe that I am the best person to do this job at this moment, for all Americans, regardless of race and gender. But I did see that photograph, and I was deeply touched by it. And you're right, it's the back of her head, her two little braids, and then I'm in the front of the photograph, obviously speaking. And
this is a really big deal, by the way. Having someone in leadership who's a woman of color is huge. It's absolutely huge. The effects of that are going to be massive in a very positive direction. But we don't need to keep on saying that. We already know that's true. Those who know that to be true are already convinced of that fact. We are not going to change more minds on that with messaging that is centered around gender and race. The best messaging right now is probably what Kamala is doing, where she doesn't feed into it. Meanwhile, the Republicans are begging her to, because they want to attack it. And they're really going as far as they can, because Donald Trump is sharing memes about Kamala giving oral sex now. JD Vance is sharing Miss America, and JD Vance did an interview this today about the Miss America contest individual, comparing Kamala to a dumb beauty pageant. Fox News saying that generals would have their way with Kamala. These disgusting remarks. We don't need to talk about race or gender being an important thing, because Republicans, the Donald Trump Republicans, are showing why it's a big thing, because they cannot stop talking about it, and that's why we're going to call them weird, and that's the messaging strategy. So yeah, weird interview, Bash asking terrible questions. I'm not a fan of her at all. There's one journalist, I think it was from ABC, that interviewed Vance the other day. I'll have to do a video on them, because they did a really good job in the interview. But Bash, this is one of the worst interviews I've ever seen that was hyped up this much. Not from the answers of the candidates, but from the person doing the interview and the network representing, the network actually setting the optics for the interview. Like, this was done terribly.